Hi, I'm Barb Nangle. I'm the founder of Higher Power Coaching and Consulting. I want to welcome you to my podcast, Fragmented to Whole: Life Lessons from 12-Step Recovery. On this podcast, I share my experience, strength, and hope from recovery. I don't support or endorse any particular 12-step recovery fellowship, and I don't claim to speak for any of them either. My hope is that you will find my words helpful in some way, whether you're in recovery or not. This is episode 86, the Serenity Prayer Reimagined. I've been wanting to do a podcast episode about the Serenity Prayer for quite some time, and it's because I think the first part of the Serenity Prayer is backwards. Here's what I mean by that. The prayer starts with, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. That does not resonate with my experience. I don't get serenity and then acceptance. My experience is that once I came to acceptance, then I got serenity. Acceptance is the key to serenity, at least in my experience. For me, it was my lack of acceptance that led me to live a life without peace and serenity, which, by the way, I didn't even realize I was living without peace and serenity. I think if someone had asked me before recovery if I was at peace, I might have said yes, because I really didn't understand what peace and serenity were until I was in recovery for a while. And it was definitely after I learned acceptance. I do have another episode specifically on acceptance. It's episode number 2. And it's one of my most downloaded episodes. So if you're struggling with how to be accepting, you might want to check it out. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about how to accept things because you can do that there. But I will say that the reason that I think this is backwards is that when I accept things, it means I've stopped fighting against them. If you think about being in a fighting stance, you're on alert, you're probably tense, you're really focused on the object or the person against which you're fighting. It is not comfortable and relaxed and flowing the way that you are when you have serenity, when things are serene. To me, the opposite of acceptance is this stance, when you're on alert and you're fighting. So how can you possibly be serene? I just don't have the experience that I can get to that state unless I become accepting of things that I formerly thought were unacceptable. Probably the easiest example, and one that most people can identify with, is traffic. I really didn't understand how unbelievably resistant to traffic I was. I was the kind of person who took out all of my anger and all that shit in the car when I was in traffic. And I was way worse when there was nobody in the car with me. I mean, I was not good when there were people in the car with me, but I lost my fucking mind when I was in the car by myself. My therapist eventually helped me to understand that one of the reasons for that was because I never expressed my anger to anybody. Ever. I just went along and I was like, oh yeah, that's totally fine with me, and things like that, when it wasn't. So I had this big buildup, and in the car, in traffic, was the place that I would take it out, isolated in the car because it was, quote, safe. And I say that because I was codependent and I was so focused on other people. And what they thought of me mainly, and I didn't want them to see or hear any of that stuff. So I took it out on myself. I was the only person that went through that stuff. It was my lack of acceptance of there being traffic that opened the floodgates of all the anger and frustration, etc. And I just lost my fucking mind in traffic. And I can see now that I had this subconscious idea that all of this was built on, which was there shouldn't be traffic, as if the road was made for me and me alone, as if all the people on the road were in my way and they should be driving the way I want them to drive, which, by the way, was faster and also on the other side away from me. Now I can see that that thinking is ridiculous. I was resisting. I was not accepting that highways were built for traffic and that there will always be other people on the road. Once I accepted all of that, I could drive in so much more of a serene state. I wasn't tense. I wasn't activated. I wasn't in fight or flight mode, and I was able to be serene. The fact that I was in recovery and dealing with my codependence and learning how to tell the truth about when I was upset or if I didn't want to do something, that helped too, because then I didn't have the buildup of all that tension. In other words, I also learned to accept and act on my own preferences rather than putting other people's feelings and preferences ahead of my own. For me, it wasn't, I got serenity from God and then I was able to accept things. I was able to have God help me get acceptance, and then I got serenity. Something else that's become clear to me lately is that I think the Serenity Prayer is really about boundaries. I've been doing webinars on boundaries, and I'll be piloting a group coaching program in January on boundaries as well. So they've been on my mind a lot. And I realize that asking for the wisdom to know the difference between what I can and cannot change is asking God, where does my boundary belong? Asking for the courage to change the things I can is about what's inside of the boundary, which is me, my thoughts, my feelings, my attitudes, my behaviors. And the courage to accept the things I can't is about what's outside the boundary, that is everything else, people, places, things, institutions. If you're someone who could use a little help with all of this, consider joining my group coaching program that's beginning in January. It's called 6 Weeks to Better Boundaries with Barb. If you'd like a sampling of what that will be like, you might want to attend my free webinar called Myths and Misconceptions About Boundaries. It's on Monday, December 14th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will drop links to both of those in the show notes. So all that being said, here's how I think the Serenity Prayer could be improved. God, grant me the ability to accept the things I cannot change so I can achieve serenity. May you learn acceptance and become serene. Talk to you next week. That's it for today. Please share this episode with anyone who might find it helpful. If you like what you've heard here, you might be interested in private coaching with me. If that sounds like you, then head on over to barbchat.net, or you can get on my calendar for a free 20-minute consultation to help you make lasting changes in your life, like I've made deep, lasting changes in my life. My ideal client is someone who is ripe for change, but I'll coach anyone who wants to be happy, joyous, and free. So if that's you, then go to barbchat.net and get on my calendar. I'd love to chat with you. Please like and subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast outlet. This helps other people find me. Thanks for listening.